Recording in progress, so thank you. Thank you. I often forget. So it is an active, engaged process. Please be thinking as the speakers are speaking of any questions you might have, but also what is it that you are going to do with the information that's been presented? What is it that your organization is going to change or start thinking about doing differently, adding, etc., based on the information you're hearing today here at the BEC, and share those out when it's time for discussion. And with that, I'm going to turn this whole thing over to Ryan Witten. He is with Alaska Version 3. This is a nonprofit that I am really excited to get to know better. It is a organization, nonprofit, that fosters innovation so that Alaskan can be more sustainable, move into an economic, prosperous future for all Alaskans. And so with that, Ryan, you can add anything else that I left out in your intro and kick us off with a safety moment.
Thank you, Mari. Well, I appreciate the introduction and the opportunity to be here today to speak with you all and to ask the question, what's next for Alaska? And I think that the panel of speakers that BEC has helped to bring together today are all working on various aspects of what is next. When we look into the future, 3, 10, 30 years for Alaska, what do we see? What does the workforce look like? What do the economic engines of Alaska look like? What does our state look like? And I believe that these folks are working on industries that will play a role in Alaska's economic future. And so it's exciting to get to peer into the crystal globe a little bit and see what that might look like, and then work together as a system to explore how we could connect, convene, catalyze, and support the development of Alaska's workforce and industries for a vibrant economic future for Alaska. You know, a little bit about myself. I've been in Alaska at this point about 12 years, and I spent 6.5 years or so working in youth workforce development, where we paired vertical hydroponics and workforce development, supportive employment, and mental health supports through a program called Alaska Seeds of Change. And working in that program, I had some firsthand experience with the supportive employment and what a workplace could look like to help support folks who are actively trying to build skills, upskill their abilities, and also got to peer behind the curtain a little bit into the interesting world of indoor agriculture and controlled environment agriculture, and started to appreciate the connections between energy and water and food security and how that supports a resilient community. As a part of that, I then started to ask the question, okay, so these young folks that I'm working with, where are they heading to next? What are the other job opportunities that are out there for them? And how are we helping to connect them? You know, as we're thinking about the industries or career pathways that they might engage with, what do we see for the future of Alaska? And I didn't have a clear answer. And that started me to have conversations with folks around me. You know, if I don't have the answer, I know I'm not the smartest person in the room. Who else does? And so I started to ask that question, which led to a group of folks getting together and asking what's next for Alaska, and eventually forming Alaska Version 3. And as AKB3, we're asking what's next for the state and how do we work together to get there to support a vibrant Alaskan economy. And again, I want to pause after that long-winded bio for myself here and say thank you all for the work that you do to help shape and form this economy, and meeting the moment that we are in with massive amounts of infrastructure investment and rapid change that we have in our state and the world around us. It's exciting times, but it asks a lot of all of us. So thank you for the work that you do. And with that, I would like to ask for a safety moment. Does anyone have a safety moment they'd like to offer? Well, hearing none, I'm going to go with my standard, which is just a reminder that anytime you are working with a ladder, please try to keep 3 points of contact with that ladder at all times. Ideally, you are working with a ladder that is OSHA approved and that is going to keep you and your staff safe. And also be mindful of slips, trips, and falls. The #1 workplace hazard. And so just be aware of your environment and the space around you as you're working to help keep you and your coworkers safe. Any other safety moments or thoughts? Otherwise, we'll carry forward.
So I'll jump in. I kind of have a standard safety moment too, and I think April is Suicide Awareness Month. Please be thinking about others around you and reach out and care for your neighbors if people are struggling. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Mari. Self-care is important, and it's important that we look out for those around us that we care about and work with. So speaking of looking out for the folks around us that we work with, I'd like to begin to introduce our panel today. We have an exciting lineup of folks. Mr. Erik O'Brien, who will be sharing a bit about mariculture and his work. We have Cristian Rabiti, who is working with, trying to find his link here. Apologies for sorting through my emails, but working with NuCube Energy. We have Masoumeh Heidari, who is working with AI and assistive technology and all sorts of exciting tech. And then we have Mr. Adam McCullough, who is working, apologies, folks. My bio list that I had lined up is not nearly as clear as what I thought it was. I'm going to ask each of our panelists to give a brief introduction for themselves that is a little bit more robust than what I've offered here. And then we'll hop into presentations from each of the speakers. And we'll have about 10 minutes or so of conversation and then presentation, and then about 5 minutes or so of Q&A for each of the folks. And then at the end, we'll open that up a little bit more. But as Mari noted, we'd like this to be an active conversation. And so please get your questions ready. And we're particularly hoping to hear today about the industries that are being impacted, or the connections between these interacting industries that we're going to hear about, how it's going to be impacted by technology that will be adapted over the coming years, and how workforce development stakeholders and what they could learn or know about the industry, or clarifications that they might want to pursue as they look into the future, and how to support folks who are preparing for these careers. And then how these technologies, how these shifts in our workforce and in our industries will change the demands of Alaska's workforce and the skills that are needed. So with that, I'm going to ask Mr. Erik O'Brien for a brief intro, and then we can work our way through the list of panelists. Thank you very much.
Good morning, Erik O'Brien, and I will expand on that when I speak. Thank you.
All right, sounds great. Cristian, would you care to go next? And then Masoumeh, and then Adam?
Hi, Cristian Rabiti. I'm currently the CEO and co-founder of a microreactor company, NuCube Energy.
Hi everyone, I'm Masoumeh. I'm an assistant professor of computer science at UAA.
Good morning, I'm Adam McCullough with NV5 Geospatial, and I'm going to talk about innovations in geospatial technology with applications in Alaska.
Excellent. Thank you all. Well, I appreciate you being here today and sharing a little bit more about the work that you're doing and the emerging trends that you're seeing. With that, Erik, will you take it away?
Very good. Thank you, Ryan. Thank you, Mari. Keep switching into speaker view. I hate looking at my face on the big screen when I'm talking to a group. I always have trouble figuring out who I am when I give the mariculture conversation. So here it goes. I, as a professional, work for the Denali Commission. We are a grant funding agency tasked with investing in rural Alaska. We are a special entity that has some unique tools and some flexibilities to try to draw money into rural Alaska. Privately, I grew up as a fisherman, a set net fisherman on Kodiak Island. I continue to do that today. And when I was working in economic development before this, I was tracking wanting to grow our coastal communities. And I was looking at oysters initially and really struggling with how you could get an oyster business off the ground without going bankrupt. The economics were really, really tough on the front end. Or raising capital, which just means you end up working for someone else. So why start working for yourself when you have to raise someone else's money and you end up working for them? So it was a conundrum. And then someone said, well, have you ever thought about kelp? I said, well, no, it's something that gets in our nets and it's a problem. What are we talking about? I said, no, kelp is an extremely viable biomass. It's got chemical properties, sugars and carbohydrates and proteins and special properties that we don't even fully understand. And it's a $1 billion global market. Maybe we should be farming that in Alaska. And I said, well, okay, I'm curious. So I started going down that road. And I ended up being the accidental and first kelp farmer in Alaska. So these we were always going on the pitch. I was bought in. I said mariculture is going to be a big deal. So I was bought in and I said, okay, this is good for coastal Alaska's. We need to have redundancy in our fishing operations, which if anybody is reading fishing news right now, seafood industry news, that the topic is more relevant now than at any time in the last 20 years, probably. So these communities should buy into mariculture, specifically kelp. It has quick turnaround times. It grows fast. It's a $1 billion market. We can easily get into it. And the first permit started percolating through. We were working with the regulators and no permits. So on the last week before it was due, I filled out a couple of applications and submitted for myself in Larsen Bay and one for another one in Kodiak. And those ended up being the Kodiak cluster. The other one that did get put in at the last second was down in Ketchikan, what is kind of your two clusters, even that we see today. Things have expanded out from there. Production-wise, it has been booming. Processing and marketing downstream-wise, it's a little bit more nuanced to say that nobody's made money yet. We've been on the bleeding edge. But I have great optimism, probably optimism to a fault, that this will turn around and that the mariculture industry, to include kelps and to include bivalves, oysters, I think is particularly interesting. And then to include other species, like maybe those slimy and odd creatures like the sea cucumber. What kind of properties are in there? The Chinese have thought that there was medicinal properties in cucumbers for, I don't know, 1,000 years. So can we quantify that? And what is that? Are there big markets? I absolutely believe that. So to stop there, just say we are leaders in manufacturing seafood. Why does Alaska excel in seafood? And the answer is very, very simple. It is not the easiest place in the world to process seafood. It's that we are close to the resource and we have an amazing and a huge resource, and it's a perishable product. So it has to be processed. We can't just produce it out of the water and ship it to market. We need to create it shelf stable, freeze it, cool it, can it, somehow create it to primary processing. And in today's day and age, we really, really need the secondary processing. And Alaska has taken probably the opposite of what Ryan would like to say with his future looking what's next perspective. And we say, what is most profitable in this moment now? And traditionally that has been getting the fish out of the water, getting it primary processed and shelf stable, and moving it to other markets for processing. Seafood is very much more complicated to say that is the problem, but I think many people are looking at it and saying that is certainly a problem, is that we weren't looking forward far enough. So bringing it back to mariculture, where are we at today? Alaska, as many of you probably know, has more coastline than the rest of the coastal United States put together. And if you have investigated and looked closely at the coastline, like I have, It's craggy. It's got deep fjords. It's got dynamic shores, meaning it's got some shallow sloping waters. It's got deep rocky waters. It's got channels, and it's got all these properties that essentially mix nutrients very, very well. We've got big tides, 25-foot tides on average. We've got wind, and we've got weather. We've got obviously the sun and all the environmental factors, and all that translates into an extremely rich environment. So for the same reasons that we've got robust fisheries, we have robust properties that can develop our mariculture industry. So by all accounts, Alaska should be an absolute leader in mariculture. We do need the markets. There are some things coming online that are super exciting in kelp. That's not what I'm going to get into right now, because it's still would say it's on the bleeding edge, but boy, it's sure getting close to cutting edge. So we will produce global quantities of kelp, and we will produce, I believe, global quantities of oysters. And I do believe we'll get into those other things. But as a state, maybe this is the conversation to have, looking at our seafood industry. What do we want to do differently? And I would argue that the value in mariculture is going to be on three fronts. It is going to be in the farming, which is going to be the easiest, the least capital intensive, the best way to step in quickly, like I did, literally by accident, because no one else had picked up that license and submitted it. But we've matured substantially since then in the last 10 years. And there's quite a bit of new capacity. The farming systems that are developed now are vastly different than they would have looked like in the beginning. And I expect they will look vastly different than they look in the next 10 years as we scale up supply. But that's one component, and one that I would argue is, maybe even the lowest value. And I say that as a farmer. That's my perspective. I am not the technologist or the lab or the roboticist, but the farmer. But these other sectors that are really fascinating for mariculture is in the lab sector. So in order to farm, you need seed. So you need hatchery. You need to be able to produce seed, and you need to be able to control those things. Well, in the case of kelp now, because of the way that its properties are, we don't just mechanically process. Well, we do today, but we're moving rapidly towards not mechanical, bioprocessing. So you are extracting the carbohydrates and the proteins and the lipids and the aguar. Again, I'm not a biologist. I do know about these properties, but Alaska is going to open up a deep biological field with mariculture. And again, I mentioned the sea cucumbers, those slimy creatures that the Chinese have believed have properties for 1,000 years. We quantify that. What is that? What's in there? What kind of healing properties or aphrodisiac properties or any other properties that these species have? And that comes down to the lab. And so if Alaska can build out, and we will build out our labs, farming could conceivably be, I mean, we're guessing, shooting from the hip here, magnitudes larger than the farming sector. You could have high-end PhD scientists, you can have biochemists, you can have, again, I'm not a lab person, I don't know those fields, but you can have labs set up in the majority of our coastal communities, creating the seed, the lowest impact and the least technical. And as the industry matures, we can get into bioprocessing, we can get into more advanced genetics, we can get into things that I can't even comprehend. But globally, this is a massive sector. And when we think about our fisheries and where we're at today, we exported those higher value things, and we probably don't want to do that going forward with mariculture. So we want to be very deliberate about those other higher value sectors. And the other one that I am particularly excited about is the automation and the robotics. So if you look at the global scales for kelp, it is in the billions or even tens of billions of pounds, multi-billion dollars, but the price point is very low. And so how are we going to pay people what we want to pay our coastal people? We want to pay Americans. And we get to that scale, and there's going to need to be some degree of automation, some degree of robotics. We are going to need to develop new ways of communicating with underwater robotics, maybe sending an autonomous underwater drone on a mission, and that mission might be chopping kelp. That mission might be exploring the seafloor for anchoring. That expedition may be harvesting or somehow moving or robotics. But these things must be developed for the mariculture industry. And I would argue that Alaska can do it, and that the robotics and the mechanical side of this farming industry can be, again, equally as large as the lab sector. So the farming, easiest one to step into, huge value. I mean, I think it could be as big as commercial fish, so on the order of $1 billion X vessel. But the lab and the robotics level, that could be magnitudes larger. So what we're facing is an industry that has a very real potential to exceed the largest economic driver of coastal Alaska, with inroads into urban Alaska. Again, those labs and those robotics and those technologies can move right up into our universities in Anchorage and Fairbanks and Juneau, and we can. And I guess the last thing I would say on this is that not only can, we must, because if we don't develop these things in a linear fashion, meaning the simple things that it's easy and it's cheap right now, near shore, close to shore, with communities, with rudimentary technologies, lines, anchors, simple labs, simple the recreating of that seed, drawing in those big companies. Again, linear, moving up the technological chain, developing cheaper farming mechanisms, we're going to miss it. And at some point, I'll say Google, not picking on Google, but a very well capitalized, highly technological entity is going to say there is a huge market here, and we don't need to go to Alaska to find cold water. We have cold water, which is really brilliant. We also have the near shore water, which is close to the surface for obvious reasons. But if Google were to say, hey, if I can capitalize $1 billion farm, I can produce everything that Alaska can produce in one farm, 100 miles offshore, moving within the water column because of the depths, the nutrients are at different places and the sun is at different places. But absolutely, from a technical level, it can be recreated. And then we will never compete with Google. Because Alaska can't raise $1 billion to start a farm right now. We can't raise hardly a couple $100,000. But the technology isn't there. We don't have the autonomous systems or the advanced labs and genetics to do that. But if we miss the boat, don't develop this industry today, Google will, because it is a multi-billion, and I'm not saying Google, a very large capitalized, technologically sophisticated company will develop it, and they will move it offshore where it is cheaper and more efficient at massive, massive, massive global scales, and Alaska will miss out. So my message today in closing is three-part. We have an amazing opportunity. We need to think about it from a linear perspective. And from the linear perspective, we need people in skiffs, our coastal people, to be in skiffs doing the lowest value, easiest to access, easiest to capitalize things, farming. As we're also moving down that initial road and we're growing biomass and product, kelp, bivalves, and other species, we need to think about our lab sector. We need to think about, what does hatchery technology look like? What are they doing in Denmark, who are leaders in this field? And what can we do here? Those conversations are happening, but we need to systematically think about it. What about robotics? As a phenomenal lead, I think, at a global level on aerial and unmanned vehicles. What does that mean for underwater? I see kitschy, sort of neat underwater drones, but something to deploy that is durable and redundant and can operate in a marine environment. I'm not seeing those. Maybe we should be developing those. And if we can all push through this very challenging project, again, in the last 10 years, most people that have been involved in the sector have lost money. But can we look beyond that to Ryan's statement? What's next? What is the future that we want? And can we all sort of push beyond these growing pains? And can we move up the value chain and create an economy that can easily be multi-billion dollars annually, sustainable, and the byproduct is largely, not exclusively, but largely good for the environment? I think we can, absolutely.
Yeah.
And my comments on mariculture.
That's excellent. Thank you, Erik. It's hard to hear your vision and not get excited by the opportunities that exist there. And I do think that the challenge that we have as an industry is figuring out, how can we scale the industry? How can we figure out things that are profitable so that it makes sense for someone to spend time working on these opportunities? But if we can connect, link, and leverage them, then there is some massive opportunities that could be on the other side. And it's the connections that you're calling together of the supply chains for kelp and bringing it to market, and the processing that is going to be needed, and the automation requirements that could help the industry to scale. All of those things take computational power, but power as well, because they're relatively energy intensive to dry out kelp, so then you can move it along the supply chain or take it through some of the different lab processes that might be required. So we're going to roll forward here. I apologize that we're not going to be able to get into some Q&As quite yet for you. But I would like to carry forward with Cristian and hear a little bit about the work that he's up to.
I mute myself. Okay, sorry. I just made a comment about I felt the pressure building while you were talking about the need for power to move and process the kelp, right? And this is one of course, the industry that could be interesting for nuclear application. So let me share the screen. Do you still see it properly? Like you see the full? Yeah. Okay. Perfect. Well, not from the last slide, probably. All right. So, personally speaking, I've been in national lab for most of my career. So I started at Argonne National Lab, and I spent most of my career at the Idaho National Lab here in Idaho Falls, where actually the company is situated. And I spent probably about 15 years of my life at the National Lab. Then a couple of years ago, I joined a private company, Ultra Safe Nuclear Corporation, and that is the moment in which I start to know more about Alaska. I was in Alaska for a fair amount of time in the last 3 years, visiting the different places where we were, in Fairbanks, Valdez, Anchorage, of course, and so on. So this to say that I learned a lot during Alaska during that time, and this is the reason why I'm here, in the sense that I really believe that nuclear represent a great opportunity for Alaska. So about my company, and the reason why I talk a little bit about my company, because you may hear different speech about nuclear, and of course, they need to be in context with respect to which nuclear technology and which reactor size we are talking about. So in my case, the company was actually started by the desire of Bill Gross, which is the chairman and co-founder of one of the most successful and old incubator in California. So, friend of a friend introduced me to Bill, and we decided to start this company. So I think that there is a lot of things that are happening also outside Alaska about the nuclear being essentially, kind of out of the doghouse for many years, has not been probably the favorite new source of energy clean, but I think that finally there is an understanding that nuclear is necessary. Talking about what we do, we are designing a very small reactor. We are talking 1 to 2 megawatt, and that has to do with what I'm going to talk about in terms of where I see the opportunity and what is the type of workforce structure that we will require if the nuclear market in Alaska would open. Again, we are talking about a very small reactor. A few trucks will be enough to bring the whole plant at site and to build it in less than a month. So I've been following Alaska for several years, and Alaska has been doing a lot of steps in the right direction to bring nuclear as a viable opportunity for producing of heat and energy in Alaska. And we can mention the bill that was signed by the governor to streamline the licensing process in Alaska, and also the Ellison microreactor pilot project that is supposedly to be the first reactor deployed in Alaska. So there are a lot of forces and a lot of enabling factor that makes me optimistic about bringing the nuclear energy to Alaska. Now, talking about where I see the opportunity, again, this is more from my perspective. I would encourage you to read this very great report from the University of Alaska Center of Economic Development, where they look into what is the size of the community and what is the price of electricity in those communities. So most of these, we are talking about rural community. These are from, they are below the threshold to be characterized as rural hubs. You can see, the size of the energy demand for this community in terms of installed capacity. That will be a match for the reactor that we are designing. That is the market that we are looking at as our company. There are other type of microreactor, larger scale, that could be more of a fit for a rural hub. They could be a fit even for from the rail belt point of view. I'm not going to talk about this. It's not my sector at this moment in time. But the key point, the key message is that there are several tens of rural communities that they will have the right size of the demand. And right now, in terms of cost of electricity, they will be far above what a microreactor will be able to provide in terms of price of electricity. So there is a win-win situation at this point where it would be possible, to bring this nuclear reactor, decrease the cost of electricity. And a nuclear reactor is not only about the price of electricity; it's also about the reliability. So, the great talk that we just heard about the Mariculture, they have a customer in the world, right, there to sell their products. For us, it's more like we are an enabling factor for the industry. As you were pointing out, everybody needs heat. Everybody needs electricity, right? So we are here, the idea of bringing nuclear to Alaska is the idea is to build a less expensive, more reliable source of steady electricity and energy into Alaska. So there are definitely other applications, not only the rural community that we are looking at. Well, seafood was just mentioned, in mining, oil and gas. And we should not also forget that this industry, if the heat could be provided at a reasonable price, there are also an opportunity, again, another win-win situation. And, again, given my previous experience, I already had mariculture as a possible future opportunity. And indeed, also hydrogen and ammonia are things that reliable, economically viable source of energy in terms of heat electricity can bring to Alaska. So again, nuclear is not an industry that is going to sell outside Alaska per se, but it is an industry that is enabling other industry by itself. Now, to go to the specific of the workforce. Okay, so nuclear is, first of all, I have to start saying that especially the very specialized workforce in the nuclear industry, which is the operator, are not a decision of the designer. So I cannot decide how many people I would like to, I want at a plant. Is given actually by the regulatory body, is a requirement. So this introduces the next slide where I will talk about what is going on right now in the industry. But just to keep in mind, the reality is that, of course, maintenance and just maintenance is up to the designer of the plant. So the number of people that there will be needed for maintenance is something that we decide in terms of when we design the plant. But operation and security requirements are instead negotiated. Well, no, not negotiated. I mean, we make a proposal, but of course, we should prove that our proposal is reasonable to the regulatory body. So now, for a microreactor, there is a little bit of reality that we have to touch. So if you crunch the numbers, let's say that you need an operator. An operator is not something that you can have, in the morning and not having in the afternoon, or not having during the night. So for an operator, it's a 24/7 job. So if you are required to have an operator, you are required to have an operator 24/7, which essentially is equivalent to 5 shifts a week. So 5 shifts a week, for a 100K person is about 6 cents or $60 a megawatt hour in terms of impact to the cost of electricity. So it's not negligible. So when you talk about very small reactor, it is easy to understand why the industry right now is looking into remote operations. So to bring this workforce actually not on the reactor, because these are so small reactors that is very likely that you should be able to have an operator being able to oversight multiple units, right? And this is a trend that is going on in the industry. Now, I think personally that the compromise is going to be the regional centers. So what I think is going to happen is that we're going to have a regional center which will have operator looking to multiple units. There will be specialized staff being able to be dispatched to the unit in case of malfunctioning and things like that, so they can do the proper repairing. So it's a new concept. There is no guarantee that the regulatory body will accept it, but I think that is where the industry needs to be in order to find a compromise in terms of the impact of staffing on the operation of the reactor. And again, I go back to one point, let's not think about nuclear as a source of labor and employment by itself, but is really the enabling of all the other industry that they can flourish, given the fact that we can provide low-cost electricity and very reliable, in a very reliable fashion. Concerning the type of staff that are needed, so there is an organization, it's called NEI, Nuclear Energy Institute, which is the trade organization for the nuclear industry. So NEI has actually developed, I think in 2007, what is called the Nuclear Uniform Curriculum Program. They actually developed a 2-year program that is meant to train people to work in the nuclear industry. You can find actually the list of the university colleges that are offering this 2-year training. Actually, I checked. There is not a university in Alaska, so probably something to think about. And here you can find on the table, you can see that there is a lot of people that are just skilled trades in the sense they are not completely dedicated to nuclear technology, right? So a nuclear reactor comes with a lot of in some sense, not nuclear-related jobs, right? When you have to build, especially during the construction stage. Well, that closed my presentation. I mean, I'm definitely open to questions.
Thank you very much. Interesting presentation to hear about the challenges and opportunities that distance in Alaska presents and the unique workforce development needs. Thanks for calling out that direct connection between your staffing load and then the cost per kilowatt hour. And I imagine that there's still some margin or room in there for the existing cost per kilowatt hour in community, but
yeah, but again, is very related also to the size of the reactor, right? That numbers was for 1 megawatt, which is a completely hypothetical reactor, right? If you have a unit, if you have a site that requires 5 megawatt, that at that point you can smear it over 5 units, right? So it's very dedicated. The calculation was just an example, but it's just to keep in mind that probably regional centers are something that it will be very beneficial for the future for the nuclear industry.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I'm excited to hear a little bit more about the remote monitoring and some of the remote control options that might exist. And so I think we have a nice flow within our speakers here. If we don't have any burning questions at this point, then I'd like to carry on to our next speaker. So I'm going to take a deep breath to see if anyone wants to raise their hand or shout out a question, but otherwise we'll carry on. All right. Well, thank you, Cristian. And Masoumeh, please take it away.
Hello again, everyone. My name is Masoumeh. I'm an assistant professor of computer science at University of Alaska, Anchorage. And I've joined UAA around 2 years ago. Before, I was a postdoctoral fellow at Johns Hopkins University. My area of research is artificial intelligence and data science. And I still do research in these fields, and I also teach courses, AI-related courses here at UAA. Thank you for giving me the opportunity today to talk with you about the impact of AI and automation in industry and what will be the role of UAA in this period of time. How can we perform better? How can we be more helpful for Alaskans industry? So let's take a moment and see actually where we are. Whether your work is directly related to AI and automation or not, I'm pretty sure that the terms have become familiar because you have probably recently heard a lot about these technologies in news. And it's not actually surprising because we are in the era of Industry 4, where we are actually leaving this technologies. We are trying to integrate these smart technologies in our daily life, in our industries, how we work, how we innovate, how we produce. And it's not about one discipline or one area. AI is everywhere in healthcare, in education, business, social work. But where we are in Alaska, we need to actually think how these technologies can change our life here in the state of Alaska, considering the unique, probably challenges, the industries that we have. What could be the most transformative effect of this automation in Alaskan society and businesses? How can actually we use them so that they help us, they not only us like in the cities, but also probably the most remote villages in Alaska, and actually are we there? Where the good news is that Alaskans have started using robotics, AI, and automation a long time ago. Currently, robotic-assisted surgeries is being used in Alaska's hospital, the Providence Hospital, for example. I know that they're using Da Vinci robots in order to do more precise surgeries, and it is very helpful in order to reduce the pain, the blood, and make everything, the operations more precise, make it easier for the surgeons to do the work, and even for the patients. ROVs are actually being used in Alaska's fisheries research. These are kind of remotely operated vehicles, have made everything more precise in the fisheries industries. They have made it easier and they're less costly. And they can be used in order to monitor the health of like sea life and wherever we need them. Alaska have been using robots in order to do predictive maintenance for over 3 decades. And they are important because we can find problems whenever they're still small before they get bigger and actually make big issues. And these have been used in Alaska. But that's not all. Probably if we search more, we can see more applications of AI that currently being used in the state, but AI can be used in many disciplines. In oil and gas, we can use them in order to enhance exploration, in order to reduce the risk, in order to make things faster and safer. We can use them in fishing and seafood in order to optimize the catches, reduce bycatch, and things like that. We can use them in tourism in order to personalize experience, in order to do recommendation systems that are actually aware of the context of Alaska and make everything more efficient. We can use them in mining for safer operations whenever there are hazardous tasks. So we don't want actually human do those things. We can use robots and we can do them autonomously. We can actually monitor our forests. Now we have projects here at UAA that are trying to predict wildfire before they happen based on satellite imagery and some other data that they can collect. We can use them for renewable energy in order to improve performance and maintenance of renewable installations using AI and automation. But how much we have used them, we still need to make progress. Comparing to other states, well, this is in manufacturing and robotics, but I'm pretty sure the statistics are the same for all aspects of AI and automation. We are using them, we are making progress, but we are not using them as much as others are using. Why is it important to be included? It's not just about using them. It's important for us to be included even as developers of AI. We want our perspectives to be included. We want AI to consider diversity. We want our students' voices be heard. Believe me, AI is still a novel field. There are lots of open problems that can be solved even by our undergraduate students. They come up with great ideas. There is room for improvement in AI. They can even contribute in actually building AI better, in making smarter machines that can perform better, in order to make AI more personalized, to actually be kind of culturally sensitive and tailored to the needs and unique needs of our state and things like that. So it's important to actually tackle diversity early in AI development before it gets bigger, so that we make sure that our perspectives are included too. Well, that is our actually vision here in the University of Alaska Anchorage. In the Department of Computer Science and Engineering, our goal is educating the next generation of AI researchers and innovators. And our students are interested. They are doing great. They're very active in robotics. They go to competitions and they compete with top-tier universities. And they're representing actually the state very nicely. We have enough courses here at UAA. We have artificial intelligence, machine learning, computer vision courses. And in each of these courses, our students actually select a topic of their own interest and do a term project on that. We have actually over 20 students in each of these courses. There is no way for me to show all of these interesting projects. I'm just choosing some of the visually appealing ones. And you can see that they are actually covering a variety of projects, and actually can solve various problems that can be used in real-world scenarios. Some of them even go further. They publish their work in international conferences. This is our undergraduate student presenting his work at MIT Digital Lab. He's actually publishing his class project. And with him, you can see that there were researchers from other top-tier universities, R1 universities, presenting their work. Our graduate students published their work in prestigious conferences. This is IEEE ICMLA conference. It is a conference with 32% acceptance rate. And not only R1 universities, but also tech companies also submit their work there. So it's very competitive. And I'm trying to say that our students can be competitive in this field. So here is where we currently are. And we do have a variety of courses to make sure that our students remain successful and competitive in this field. And they are ready, they have the skills in order to go and be competitive in their careers. But we are not going to stop there. We want to actually make AI and data science more accessible, because it's not just about computer science students, it's about every field. We want to have more accessible courses so students or professionals from other fields and disciplines can actually take those courses without lots of prerequisites like mathematical background, programming knowledge, but still they can use these things in their own fields and apply them on their project. And we want to actually support our students' research And in order to do that, actually, we need some help because, you know, AI is very interdisciplinary. We do need collaboration, interdisciplinary collaboration. In every problem that we are trying to approach, we need domain expertise. We cannot just approach that problem and solve it by our own. We need to have the knowledge of domain expert and incorporate them in our systems in order to be successful. So that is one area that we need industry to step in. We want the communication to be two ways. We want to hear from you. How can we be more helpful? Can we actually, if you need more background in this field, can we actually offer some courses in order to maybe upskill or make your workforce familiar with this technology, so then we can start communication? Or do you have problems that you want to collaborate with us and with our students in order to solve them? So that is the area that we actually need help. It is so sad to see that our students are interested, but they have to leave the state in order to find jobs in these areas that they find interesting. But the industries in Alaska are actually taking help from out-of-state institutions and companies. So this is the area that needs some work. Thank you for listening to me, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Masoumeh. I'm really excited about the unique perspectives that Alaskans have and how those perspectives might support the development of machine learning and AI. Alaska has a lot of really unique challenges and opportunities as a state that I think your students could help support some problem solving around. And I could see as this knowledge economy starts to build in Alaska and these technologies start to be more integrated with industry, how it could create a lot of career opportunities for folks and support sustainable economies and livelihoods in rural Alaska. And so I'm hearing an opportunity in there as well, though, that perhaps there's a chance to do some matchmaking between folks who are working in industry and this talent pipeline that we have developed in the university system. So thank you for helping to raise that opportunity up. All right. Well, yeah, Mari.
Well, I'll just jump in there. I'm excited about that call to action from Masoumeh for those of us that do represent industries, that we do have the connections. And so could we put it in our newsletters? A little blurb in our newsletter that UAA is looking for opportunity, or mention it during our industry meetings. I mean, I feel like we could do that at ASA, and just want to just put that out there to encourage our fellow BEC members to consider something like that as well. It's really exciting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I know I have an idea or two that I'd like to follow up with you on, so I'm looking forward to continuing the conversation.
Thank you so much.
Well, if we have any other questions, I'd be happy to hold space for them right now. But otherwise, Adam, I'd like to have you share a little bit more about the work you're doing.
Yeah, no problem. Well, one problem. I do have a hard stop here in 2 minutes. So
okay.
In lieu of my presentation, maybe I could just piggyback on a little bit of what Masoumeh was talking about, because I work for a company called NV5 Geospatial. We've had decades of experience, and we're here at Mariculture in Anchorage, working all over Alaska. We integrate lots of different types of remote sensing and computer-based data collection technologies. We use fixed-wing manned aircraft, unmanned aircraft, helicopters, boats, anything that kind of moves that we can put a remote sensing sensor on, we'll generally take advantage of it. And we bring in lots of different types of professionals of varying background. It used to be our profession was very much focused on surveyors, geomatics professionals, geographic information systems specialists, which is my education background. But more and more as we integrate into different industries and work with different clients in oil and gas and electric utility, municipal governments, we're bringing in a lot of different types of backgrounds. So we hire people with hydrology degrees and people with expertise in engineering and forestry, soils experts. So there's a lot of different backgrounds that we're looking for when we hire. Because when we go to Alaska or Hillcorp with a pipeline integrity application, we want to look at how pipelines might be changing due to erosion and permafrost over time. So we need people that understand this sorts of scientific processes. I really enjoyed Masoumeh's presentation because we rely heavily on UAA's geomatics program. A lot of the people that come to our office that we look for are coming from that program. Also, UAF has a very good geospatial program. But we're also looking for people, as I mentioned, with engineering degrees and people that are coming out of the university with different ecological sciences backgrounds. So I do have to run. Perhaps I could do a more robust presentation down the road for the group, but I do appreciate the opportunity to connect with this organization. There's clearly more work that I need to do to connect with the universities and make sure that we're looking at potential applicants in our field, because we're fairly rare in that in Alaska we have a high-tech field here where we're hiring people in high-tech and advanced computer science and different backgrounds that have roles for the future. So I do have an action for myself to make some more connections with the university and establish more of these, more of that pipeline for talent. So thank you.
Thank you, Adam. I appreciate that you were able to join today and share a bit with us. I apologize that we didn't have some more time to learn about the work that you're doing. If you were looking for maybe one skill or if we could help find someone or a skill set to train up for you, or, what are you looking for? How could we help you?
I think it's like a lot of things. People that have that sort of, multivariate background that are able to synthesize different subject areas is really helpful. A lot of the people that we bring in have things from, creative arts, quite frankly, that are able to synthesize different subject areas and unite those. Reporting is a big factor in what we do. So people that have technical editing skills and people with science background in general are heavily sought after in our field.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you. It sounds like there's maybe multiple pathways for that career pipeline to come together.
Yep. Well, thank you guys. I do have to run, but I appreciate the invitation. Have a great day.
Thank you very much. All right. Well, I see that Adam has had to transition to his next meeting, and I believe that Mr. Erik O'Brien has transitioned as well. But we still have Masoumeh and Cristian with us today, and I would like to open the floor for questions, comments. I'm hoping that there's some inspiration or thoughts that have been sparked from the information that's been shared. So anything coming to mind for folks, or questions that you'd like to ask our speakers for today? Hey, Kai.
Hey, I'll jump into the breach. Lots of interesting information. What I'm, struck by in all of the presentations is the innovation and the opportunity for economic transformation that these opportunities show us. They're not the old oil, gas, and mining world that we sometimes think of in terms of the jobs that existed. And I'm curious how each of you, that are sharing your work are thinking about the role of innovations, and in particular, startup companies and fostering more startups, and thinking about companies like Adam that I think, is kind of perhaps a hidden asset of what is really going on in our economy. And while we focus in on some big oil and gas developments, which are certainly important as an economic driver, I'm not sure that they're the place where our real jobs and future are that are going to keep Alaskans here and give our young Alaskans that are in school an exciting future to think about what they might be doing. And so I'm curious how do startups and how do innovation fit into this equation of creating the kind of jobs that we want and the kind of jobs that will create a magnet for the Alaskans who are here and the people that we might see come to Alaska because of the opportunities we're creating. Thanks. That sounds like it was probably taken as a Kai question. Sorry about that.
Well, I think it's a great question. I'm curious if either of our speakers have any thoughts for how innovation, startups, and creating the jobs that Alaskans want play into the work in the industries that you're working in.
Of course, that's a great idea to help our students to actually use their own ideas and have their own companies to start with. I am very knowledgeable in the field of business and how this is going to happen. But I know that at UAA, we do have department or a College of Business. They're very active in these types of activities. And they do actually have a program helping students to come up with their own businesses. I think it's a great idea, but I don't have much information about it.
And if I could just, ask you, kind of a follow-up question to your comment, I want to be clear that, I think a lot of the opportunity around entrepreneurship and innovation and students isn't necessarily always waiting for the students to come up with their idea. I think it is about the existing industry, the players that are here today, researchers like yourself, helping us become clear on what are the challenges that matter, the challenges that are investable, and helping engage students in getting motivated to help find answers to the challenges that are out there. And yes, once in a while, it's good to have a student come up with their own wild idea and go off and do it. And there'll be great things done in there. But I think it's more important for us to take the existing industry and the players that know the industry well and the researchers that see the emerging new ideas, and they help shape the awareness of the challenges and put it out there in order to engage Alaskans in that and get them excited about the work they can be doing in solving those problems, in order to then create this mutual win. Our existing industry wins because they get the creative new talent, new ideas. Our students and young Alaskans win because they get exciting challenges to work on. And our economy wins because we then create local solutions and ventures that are meeting our challenges and our needs. So I'm curious, maybe to reframe my question, what can we do to help heighten the awareness of the challenges that are investable, important, and exciting, that would be the catalyst for the kind of jobs that we want to create? And what does that then mean for the skills those students will need? So again, probably another Kai question, but I want to reframe it into the challenges and not just the student-based entrepreneurship, which is fine, but I think there's more to be developed there.
Yes, actually, this is very exciting that now that I see it this way, that how can actually industry and university and researchers come together and come up with ideas and then engage a student. I think one way of doing it is just that deeper communication between industries and the researchers from the universities. We do need to know what kind of unique problems in Alaska exist for which we can actually propose some solutions. But that will be very exciting, a very exciting thing to do.
Hey, Ryan, this is Carrie Ann. I want to talk a little bit about the Workforce 2030 plan, but I want to recognize first that Jody's had his hand up for a little bit. So before we go into, because I think it's related to what Kai is talking about a little bit. And I can give kind of an overview. I'm certainly not an expert in these emerging fields, but I do want to chat about collaboration between education, the university system, our businesses and industries, and our state and other organizations that want to be involved in the future of the workforce. So, but I do want to recognize that Jody has a question.
Okay, great. My name is Jody Serrano. I'm with 9-Star Employment Education Services. Our primary goal is workforce development, and a lot of our clients come with a lot of barriers to achieving, career growth and, educating towards, whatever career goals they want to go towards. But my question is related to AI. I acknowledge that AI has the capacity to help reduce those barriers, but then there are some immense challenges in AI being applied ethically in companies to provide that companies may decide to radically slim down their operations because of these AI tools. So there's a risk and a reward scenario here. And my question is, given the pace that we've advanced AI tools in just ChatGPT-4 and how companies are racing to integrate that into their everyday solutions, where do you see both the opportunity for people like my clients who have immense barriers to for AI to help reduce those barriers for them to gain economic increase their economic potential? So,
Yes, I 100% agree that this technology, AI, like many other technologies, actually can have two tails. It can be rewarding and beneficial, and it can have actually risk. There are many concerns nowadays. People are thinking about the ethical side of AI, whether it's going to actually displace part of the workforce before it actually can increase the jobs and things like that. And I believe that it's totally valid concern. It's not like that we should ignore this fear. It exists. But my point is we should prepare our students, our workforce, for the area that everyone is using AI. So if they are familiar with this technology, if they know where it can go wrong, our students can take the responsibility to build AI systems that can work more responsibly, that they are tailored to needs of Alaskans, for example, or in any area or in any unique challenge that they're trying to solve. They can consider that diversity and things that are needed. For example, if there are businesses that have that concern about ethical side of the AI, one solution that comes to my mind is giving them the knowledge first. What are those problems? And in order to do that, probably they don't need to get deep into all the theories and all the mathematical background of AI, but they can still get some background that makes them prepared in order to know how to use these tools, the existing tools, and how can they adapt these tools to make them better, to make them smarter, more ethical and responsible. But in order to incorporate ethics to AI, again, I think it's an interdisciplinary thing. What I can do as an AI researcher is giving that education and knowledge to students or whoever is interested that how AI works, what are the potential risks and reward. But I do need to hear from you too, because it's a kind of how it's going to impact society. That is not what I know. I need to hear from social scientists that concern. Like, for example, about the ethical side, I need to hear from philosophers. The concerns related to business, the domain expert can help with that. And I think all disciplines need to be involved and try to come up with solutions for those concerns.
thank you.
Yeah, this is an area that I've thought a little bit about, and I'm interested in some of the studies that have shown the potential for AI to augment the human capacity. And I think where we have a real opportunity is this collaborative use of AI or assistive technology supporting the human. but we've got a question for us as industry and as a society for how we would like to develop and implement these tools, and trying to understand, as Masoumeh is calling for, what are the implications for AI and the impacts that it may have on our workforce. And frankly, I'd like to see it so that AI is making it so that, I'm the person who's making the pictures and writing the fun stuff, not the other way around where we're getting the generative images and artwork that's coming from AI. But I think that there is an opportunity to augment the existing strengths of the workforce. And I think about job carving and the way to construct roles that can support folks that maybe traditionally would be considered as having deficits in their skills. It takes some intentionality, but it's absolutely possible to find a place for folks within the workforce so that they're able to contribute their skills and actively engage. And so I'm excited to see how AI may strengthen that opportunity and ease some administrative burden. Because frankly, a lot of the administrators and institutions in my life seem like they are stretched for capacity. So perhaps there's a way to help support us to be able to connect and engage our humanity through technology. But perhaps that's an optimistic take. We'll see. Our destiny is in our hands.
I like optimism. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I see that we have Amy has her hand up, but I know that Carrie Ann has some thoughts that she'd like to share with us. I'm hoping that we can learn a little bit more about the 2030 work plan and what you have on your mind, and then we can go on to Amy.
Hey, Ryan, I'm going to defer to Amy. I want to make sure everybody gets a chance to get their questions in, if that's all right.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Thank you, Carrie Ann. So my name is Amy. I'm with the Alaska Literacy Program, which is also an adult education organization in Anchorage. And I just wanted to kind of follow up with what Jody was saying about, we have our clients who have lots of barriers. And I think Carrie Ann is going to talk about how we, get them into the workforce through the 2030 plan. I just want to, remind everybody that, adult education students do have those barriers, as Jody was talking about, but they also have a lot of things that they come with, such as, they already have the certifications or the education that you're talking about in these jobs. And I really want to thank everybody for presenting today, because it really gave me some idea of like, okay, maybe we should be kind of changing our classes a little bit to adapt, such as implementing AI standards or implementing education around AI specifically into our programming. And so I just wanted to just kind of remind people that not only, high school students and college students, but there is a workforce in the adult education realm as well. So thank you for everybody for presenting today. And I apologize for not putting on my camera. I'm stuck in the traffic jam that is happening right now on the Glen Highway. So.
So I have to say that I'm very happy hearing that. And I think UAA, at least Department of Computer Science, is very excited to collaborate in any way we can. We have thought about proposing some professional courses where it's not actually for our students, undergrads or graduate or even high school students. It's just to prepare and make professionals in the industries familiar with the field.
That would be wonderful, and I would love to reach out to you to talk about that more.
That would be great to have your input.
So one of the connections that I just want to call out a little bit more explicitly here between our two panelists is the connection between AI, computational power, and power generation. And a lot of the AI activity that is happening on servers and on computers and is relatively energy intensive. And so as we look at AI augmenting the workforce and impacting our industries, it will also have power generation implications. And so if we think about, local processing, will we need power that is in communities to support these local servers and technology? How does that start to look? But if you're running massive server farms to train these huge models like OpenAI has, they're talking about maxing out the capacity of the grid that they're on and needing to do distributive computation so that they don't overwhelm the grid systems. So there are some significant energy implications and just lots of interconnections between the opportunities that we're identifying today.
I agree with that point. My comment is that if you read the news, pretty much every other day there is a news about some deal has been struck between nuclear, new company and a large server factory farm. I don't know how to call it. So these kind of things are happening in the space of microreactor. We are more focused on dedicated support, more localized, not for the very large training, but more for the more, close to the customer, let's say in this way, requirement in terms of need. And also these kind of smaller size data center are coming along too. And, I'm not an expert here, but of course, cold weather helps because one of the costs is cooling for those data centers. So I'm not an expert in terms of what is the connection and so on in terms of a grid with Alaska, but definitely, the low temperature helps with the reducing the cost for the cooling.
So just wanted to add that this is actually a very important aspect to consider. Most of the projects that I've been talking about, our students did in their own personal computers. They actually didn't need supercomputers to do it. But if they want to actually work with huge data sets like OpenAI does, then it is a challenge. Our students don't have access to that. But it's also an open problem, an opportunity for our students to think, how can they build more efficient AI systems that actually don't need that power?
Yeah, that's exciting. I'm curious as we look at different energy generation technologies, how we might look at seasonality in computation. And if we've got a big summer season or a windy season, maybe we're ramping up the servers during that time. It's interesting to think about.
Mute. Yeah, very nice observation. Essentially, if you can build during that, you can train more models during that season. Actually, you are building wealth when the cost of energy is cheap. That's an interesting point. In the past, when I was at the National Lab, I was working this type of problem, how to integrate nuclear with renewable and the seasonality and so on. And that you're pointing out a very important fact. People always worry about, the intermittivity of wind and solar during the days, but actually the seasonality is the largest swing in terms of energy demand. So you really need something that is capable to meet the swing in the seasonality, because that is the one that is going to cause the largest change in the capacity factors.
Yeah, interesting implications for the workforce for Alaska and what that may need. If we're looking at folks who are helping to establish the broadband or telecom connections, and folks who are helping to maintain these systems in community or on the different locations where they're sited at. We've got the power systems that are operating, the telecom systems that are operating, the potential computational systems that are being operated. And they're all sort of interconnected, and the skills are related, but maybe there's some different technical domain expertise. And so I'm curious, how we may think about, circuit riders to go between the sites, or some of the cross-transferable skills that may apply in the different domains. But I think Adam was bringing up an interesting point of that. It's an interdisciplinary nature of some of the work and the industries that are coming up, which is interesting and exciting, but also a unique challenge for figuring out how to train folks for those positions and how to determine as an employer, does this person have the necessary skills? Will they be able to complete this work? And do we as an industry understand what those skills or requirements are? There's a lot of opportunity and innovation happening that is going to need some thinking and some attention, but it's interesting shifts within our workforce and the economy of Alaska.
As you have mentioned, it is an opportunity in the sense if we will have to do remote operation for nuclear reactor with regional centers, and that will be an opportunity to test all these new technology and bring, train the workforce in this new technology. That of course they can be easily translated to oil, to oil and gas industry and so many other industries. So yes, I mean, in some sense, we need to take advantage of the portability of the workforce because overall we want to decrease the cost of operating the assets.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
So a question for me is that, a lot of these, like for your nuclear reactor, mini nuclear reactors, a lot of what your industry requires a lot of monitoring, right? And that requires, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And is there, in my mind, AI could potentially augment that labor requirement in some cases. And another question, just a question in general, what is your one pitfall might be perception issues with nuclear energy in general, like these smaller. And so what are you doing or what's your plan to overcome that public perception issue?
Let's take one question at a time.
Sorry, I'll just the nuclear one was the one I was bouncing around. I have so many questions, but the nuclear reactor perception.
Okay. You want me to start from there? Well, as I said, there is a lot of things changing the nuclear reactor, right? In the nuclear world, the fact that more and more we are accepting nuclear as an integrating solution to have, I would say, not a green or not CO2 emitting way to generate energy in both electricity and heat, right? So I think that that has been internationally accepted. Now, locally, there could be still some reluctance or maybe some doubts or questions. I mean, the new generation of reactor. I mean, I work daily with my team, and we are really trying to generate a design that does not really need the man or the machine to be safe. So there is a kind of a mentality shift in the way in which we design nuclear reactor. We are not after performance, but we are more after a design that does not require the man to be in the loop, neither the machine actually to be in the loop in order to be safe. So we are, the new mentality is what we call passive safety, inherent safety, which essentially says that the design is such as that, if it goes south, worst case scenario, it shuts down. That is the way, and that we build the physics so that we achieve that kind of engineering result.
Thank
you. Interesting. Go ahead.
I was going to answer to the other question was about AI augmentation. So there is a distinction between remote operation and autonomous operation. The remote operation requires that essentially there is the capability to communicate and monitor the plant remotely and maybe do something remotely, which has a set of challenges, which are, security of the connection and things like that. On the other side, when you talk instead with autonomous operation, that is when AI gets in, right? Because at that point, you're asking the plant to respond to a change in the load profile and things like that autonomously. So that will require eventually AI to do that. Both paths are currently under consideration from the industry, and the industry has the task to bring in front of the regulator a solution that is, secure, safer, and viable.
Interesting. Okay.
Hey, Ryan, I'm going to just jump in here and tie some of this all back together to workforce development and actionable items that we can do as residents of the state of Alaska, as people representing industry and education. And as many of you may know, because we had a presentation at the last BEC meeting of the Alaska Safety Alliance in equal partnership with the Department of Labor and AWEB, are working on a plan supported by the Denali Commission called Workforce 2030, the Alaska Plan, which is a workforce development initiative. And the core group driving kind of this plan and development is a group of industry employers representing across all industries in the state of Alaska, maybe not all industries, but a wide selection of industries that, as our guests were talking about, this interrelated skill set that is required across different industries and how they're related. We're trying to take all of those types of things into consideration. There's an opportunity for all Alaskans to be involved in this, and not everyone can have a seat at the industry advisory committee level, but we have set up kind of a spoke and hub type of situation where we have interest groups. If you represent industry, parents, community, education, a specific industry sector, nonprofits, like we heard from 9-Star, excuse me, and the Alaska Literacy Project, though everyone has a seat at the table, because as we heard today, everybody has these fantastic ideas and concerns that should be addressed and discussed as we talk about developing workforce in the state of Alaska. So I will share with Mari for her report out after this some links. There's an employer survey. We encourage anybody who's an employer, and please don't pigeonhole yourself. If you are in an organization that hires people, you are an employer, whether you're an educator or whether you're a nonprofit. We're all struggling with the same issues with being able to develop and find and talented workforce here in Alaska. So please consider taking the employer survey. If you're working with job seekers and Alaskans who are looking to get into careers, there's also a job seeker and student survey. I would encourage you to take point those out to your job seekers that you're working with in your business. There's a ton of information on it. We'll supplement that in the report out afterward, but I did want to just make sure that we mention it and highlight it. It's an important project. It's a passion project for me. I'm super excited to see kind of a statewide plan that talks about all this cross-industry connectivity. So I'll leave it there, Ryan, because I know we're just really at the end of the meeting time, and I'll let you wrap it up. Thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you, Carrie Ann, for the work of the Alaska Safety Alliance to convene these meetings and to organize the surveys and the work of the 2030 plan. It really takes a systemic response to adapt and build resilience. We, as a workforce development system, as a system of employers and entrepreneurs and innovators, we have a system to build together, and it takes coming together, having these conversations, making the connections, and strengthening our ecosystem to really make a meaningful change for the future of Alaska. It doesn't just happen by accident. It's us all working together. So thank you all for coming today and for giving me the opportunity to facilitate this excellent panel and for the great conversation. Thank you. And a special thank you to our panelists who have joined today and shared their knowledge with us. I hope that you all will consider reaching out to them and looking for opportunities to collaborate or work together. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. Thank you so much for being an excellent moderator today. And just a final note, since we have run out of time, please go ahead and submit your organizational updates directly to me by email, and I will put it on our post-meeting summary. Goodbye, everyone.
Thank you all.
Thanks, Mari. Thanks, Ryan.